Well, turning to you, you attended Sydney University and you were at St Andrew's College between 1950 and 1954.
That's the Presbyterian thing coming back, you see?
That was just going to say. And as a student, did you have particular areas of law that you favoured most?
Oh, yes, certainly. I was always fascinated by private international law, which is now, I think, probably more commonly called conflict of laws, and I've taken a considerable interest in that. I was also fascinated by legal history, and torts and evidence. Those would be the four subjects that I was keenest on.
Were there lecturers who you particularly admired?
Oh yes, Bill Morrison, who lectured in torts and evidence, was a brilliant lecturer. Dr. Curry, who lectured in legal history, was also absolutely fascinating. And I don't remember who lectured us as undergraduates in private international law. I should. But I certainly do remember that when I did an aspect of private international law or international business transactions as part of my LLM much later, the lecturer, if you could call it them lectures, because the way he handled it was, he didn't just lecture at us, was Peter Nye, former judge of the Family Court. He was absolutely brilliant, and particularly for postgraduate work.
So after that, you were then, I believe, articled to a one-man firm, and that turned out to be very useful because there was a wide variety of common law work there.
Yes, not only that, I suspect that I might be the last practising barrister who ever had the obligation to prepare an abstract of title for an old system conveyance. There certainly aren't any around any longer because the old system, everything's been converted to the Torrens system in New South Wales, not quite so in Victoria. But one day my master solicitor came into me with a large box full of papers, dumped it on my desk and said, I have just been appointed solicitor for an estate which owns an area of some 5 acres of land in Redfern, bounded by Botany Road and Botany Street, and I think Redfern Street as well, shops and dwellings, and all tiny, and all under the Landlord and Tenant Amendment Act. We've been appointed to act for the estate, and our object is to get as many of the tenants out as possible and sell off as much of the land as we can. Here's the box. First thing you've got to do is prepare an abstract of title, and then you've got to start moving to get the tenants out. That's how I got interested in and came, if I may say so, to be somewhat of an expert in landlord and tenant law.
Where did your sympathies lie?
Well, when I was acting for the landlord, they lay with the landlord, but later on when I acted more for the tenant against such expert landlords' counsel as Bernie Soletto and Neil McKerris, and to this day I know my sympathies lie with the tenant very much.
That's because, would it be in part, tenants naturally, of course, have no ownership of the property, but they do have a strong proprietorial interest, and there's always a bit of a tricky grey area there, isn't there, in terms of the actual notions of ownership?
Yes, well, but particularly in this day and age, the tenants who have who one has to be sorry for are the tenants of the big property owners, the supermarket chains, and I'm not putting that quite correctly.
You're talking about the big ones, yes, like the Westfields.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Who because of their dominance, can dictate all the terms of the lease, have the financial capacity to, if you'll excuse the word, screw the tenants, and one has no sympathy with them whatsoever.
In the early days when you were exploring tenancy law, terms that are now quite flavour of the month, like cognitive ownership, weren't very much around then. But did you have, at that time, when you were first practising the area, sort of an inkling of this is going to be the way things were going to go, and this in turn would raise interesting complications and new complexities?
It was quite different because when I started doing it in the late 50s and until the end of the 60s, say, the Landlord and Tenant Amendment Act was so biased in favour of the tenants that the rules were just quite different. When I first started, the protection of the Act extended to commercial premises and not just to residences. And the Act frustrated for at least 20 years the rebuilding, the repair, the building of new shops and residences, which had an effect for many, many years.
And a very strong social effect.
Yes, yes.